So I have a bit of a story. I wanted to talk about how I got into filmmaking and videography. I'm not your traditional person who actually gets into this stuff. I got into this, older. I was about 30, I want to say 38 years old when I started this journey. And here I am now, 5 years later, doing YouTube videos, and still shooting, video for people, which is pretty crazy thinking back over the last few years. Anyway, I was kind of just reflecting about it in the middle of the night, and I decided to kind of just talk about it, and then maybe this will help somebody or help them kind of figure out that it's never really too late to start going on a path, that you feel like it's something you really want to do. So yeah, let's get into it. So how I first got started, I used to own a company called Jim's Direct USA, basically doing kind of the same thing I do now, just a little different. It was pre-pandemic. I was working with a social media manager, and he basically said, hey, for marketing, we want to make a good video, kind of like an about us, story about the company. So we went off and hired a videographer just based on word of mouth. Who would have thought, honestly, that at that point it was going to change my life, because ever since, it just became kind of like a part of what I do on a regular basis. Anyway, this guy just basically came in, super simple setup. He came with a tripod, his camera, a gimbal, maybe a lens, maybe two. I didn't even see anything like that. He just basically did this really cool about us video in the middle of our warehouse with no lighting or nothing. And, it struck me as nothing fancy, but we actually loved it. It was a very, very cool video, and he did a really good job. I almost instantly fell in love with the process of what was going on, and my wheels started to really turn, and I was like, man, that is a really, really cool job, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. After that, we kept hiring different videographers and, working with different projects that we had going on with Jim's Direct. And we even shot a few commercials, which was pretty cool. So we got to see kind of like the ups and the downs, like how, like a higher production versus a lower production. At least I was, and I was kind of like, just kind of studying how everything was done. Looking back, I guess I just got the bug. Just, maybe not wanting to be behind the camera, but just, I just fell in love with the process and the creativity it took to actually get these videos done. And I think it was pretty cool. Then the pandemic happened. When the pandemic happened, everything just changed for me. My business got shut down. A lot of people were scared. People were losing their jobs. Eventually my employees just kept quitting one by one and just basically leaving me. And eventually I just had to shut down the business. I found myself in a cycle of like conservatorships and lawsuits after that, bankruptcies, stuff I never even imagined that I would go through, to be honest with you. And it was to be honest, it was probably one of the worst times of my life, as far as my career ever goes. It was not a good feeling. But anyway, at the time I was dating my now current wife. And looking back, if the pandemic hadn't happened, I don't think me and her would still be, I don't think we would have ever gotten married if the pandemic didn't happen. So I am grateful for that. We were in a long distance relationship, so it's just kind of hard to work it out. And, it was just, I guess the shutdown just kind of brought us together, which was a blessing, the way you got to look at it like that, and eventually she moved up here, even though we had a long distance relationship. And that's kind of how we started living together. We started, doing wedding plans and what other stuff. And we just kind of figured it out from there. Anyway, I think it just kind of gave us the time and space we needed in order to really get together and say, hey, we want to be together for the rest of our lives. Anyway, that being said, I was trying to piece my life together after COVID, and, dealing with a failed business, dealing with lawsuits, with closing down this big entity that I had. I felt almost completely lost. And being a creative person with no outlet, the anxiety was brutal, to be honest. And all I had was this energy that was built up that I used to actually just put into my business. And now it has nowhere to go, which is crazy. So after a year of the shutdown, my wife, in her infinite wisdom, decides to reopen her family business, which is CSM Fitness USA. At the time, I could only support her from the distance. I was still in the middle of a lawsuit. So there was a lot of legal and financial issues that I just could not even touch or even get involved with whatever she was doing. So I just kind of stood away, and I didn't, I didn't let it stop me. I just wanted to help. So the only thing that I knew that I could do was pick up a camera. It's kind of something that I wanted to do and I was itching to do. So I decided to just do it. And I just started to create, I started to shoot like little reels, little short videos, some about us, like equipment pics, like just trying to do small commercials, nothing crazy, but it was something to kind of give like a background of the business. And I thought it was helping her. Just hoping it might help in some way was really the only reason I was doing it. This is where having a good woman in your corner actually goes a really long way. She encouraged me to take it a little bit further, and she believed in what I was doing with my creativity, even though I didn't. But anyway, not long after that, I went off and bought a real camera. I bought what I thought was a real camera. I bought basically a photography camera, a Canon 90D. And, it shot 4K and it didn't do any kind of slow motion from what I remember. But it was just, taking a step forward. I wanted to tell her story, so I wanted something to actually film her that was really cool. And it was better than my cell phone, because at the time I was just using my cell phone. It made a huge difference. And at the time, I believed that the gear was something that made the video look good and made it professional. But, I was really wrong about that. I mean, we all kind of know that it just takes like skill, time to kind of hone in how to do this and make it look good versus just buying like really expensive stuff and just shooting with it. Anyway, I did the best I could do with what I had. Without any training or anything like that. This is where I just try to make sure I put heart into these videos. I try to make sure that I was doing the best I could with what I had, and it somehow I think it worked. I'll post some of these videos here. Anyway, at some point in this process, a buddy of mine reaches out to me and asks if I could do a music video for him. And I got to be honest with you, it was a complete disaster. I completely underestimated what it really takes to actually shoot a professional music video. And I was just experimenting, and I had a couple of, good shots that came out of that whole thing. But at the end of the day, I don't think it was a good video at all. But I'll post something here or something like that for you to look at. I had no business doing, I had no business doing it really, but that's how I started it. That's how I started this whole thing. I didn't even know what I was doing yet, but I knew I wanted to do it. And I think that was what was really important. I kept shooting more business videos. Some turned out good, some turned out better, some turned out horrible. I captured some of our personal moments. Really, when I traveled, I used my cell phone a lot just because I was scared to kind of pull out a camera. I don't know, I've just always been one of those people, I just kind of like to be on the low. And I don't want to carry anything heavy either. So I was just shy and, felt awkward. I'm sure we've all been there where we feel a little awkward when we're shooting, but looking back now, you shouldn't feel awkward. People have cameras all the time and it doesn't really matter. Just shoot what you want. You're in a strange place and you want to document your film, do it, It wasn't about anything cinematic. It was about like preserving memories. And I was quietly falling like deeper into this whole thing at the time. I didn't fully realize yet that eventually I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker, or filmmaking or making videos was going to become part of my life. Like I just really didn't know, I've always admired how old movie stars leave this like huge library of movies behind that they could always look back as a visual record and, see who they were, how they moved and how they spoke at a time in their lives where, they're long past. It's in my mind, a window to the past. And even though I'm no movie star, I'm just a regular guy, I wanted something I could look back at too. Something real, something I could look back at and reflect, a way for me to remember my life and for other people to kind of like my kids, for example, to take a look back and say, that was my dad, how he used to be back then. For a while, I believed that gear was what was holding me back before I took the next step, and I couldn't get to the next level without it. So I tried to go and get some pro equipment. So I sold my Canon. I went and bought a Blackmagic 4K. I didn't even know what shooting Micro Four Thirds was, to be honest with you. I just kind of bought it thinking like, oh, this is what filmmakers use. And I got involved. I had no clue, again, just doing things on the whim. You know, I didn't know anything about codecs, grading, LUTs, about any of it. I just kind of winged it, you know, which is crazy because it just seems like a huge waste of energy, you know. I switched from using Premiere to DaVinci Resolve just because, you know, Premiere just kept crashing my computer, you know, and I think we all get it. We all get kind of like that that gear acquisition syndrome we all talk about on YouTube. And I started buying stuff, and a lot of this stuff, looking back, I just didn't need. I actually started shooting less, to be honest. I don't regret that phase. It kind of taught me how to use the tools that I had, but it gave me a better eye to what to look for, to be honest. It helped me understand why you use certain things versus why buy this certain thing. I don't know if that makes any sense. Anyway, I say all this, and here I am still trying to live my dream of shooting a documentary film. Eventually, I'll find a good story and sit down with that person and actually do a documentary that's like worth for other people to watch, you know. But for right now, I'm just on the sidelines, you know, just kind of waiting, you know, which is a strange thing for me. But at the moment my number's called, I think I'll be able to step up and still be able to and actually, you know, perform, you know, if you ask me. I keep going. I do what I can when I can. That's really what it comes down to when it comes to this. You have to try to do what you can when you can. I have a full-time career as a fitness equipment guy. Like, I've been selling fitness equipment for 23 years, so that's full-time for me. This is the same business that I lost during COVID that I've, you know, started to kind of rebuild slowly after that. At the start of the story, you know, that's kind of where I started, and here I am just bringing it full circle. And the question is, why do I keep doing this? You know, like, why do I keep chasing something that doesn't even pay? Why pour so many hours, you know, into something that might seem like a huge waste of time, you know? And the answer is pretty simple. You know, documenting, you know, capturing images and videos is my window now, you know? It's my time. It's like my time machine. It's the only way I could explain it. It's how I'm gonna hold on to the past, understand my present, and kind of like, you know, shape my future, you know? I hope this helps somebody. I hope that someone actually watches this and stays through all the way in the video. And yeah, don't give up. You could start whenever, you know, it doesn't matter what people think. Just do what you think makes you happy. And if creating something with a camera is something that makes you happy, I think you should do it. No matter where your skill level is, no matter what you have. You know, like I said, I started with nothing. And here I am, and yeah, that's it. I hope this helps someone, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.